The millionaire saw the blood, realized she was a virgin, and then did something no one would ever do. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Adam Sinclair was a man who had everything: money, power, success. He had it all, and yet something always felt missing. He was accustomed to a world where wealth bought everything, where every problem could be solved with money, and every desire could be satisfied with a snap of his fingers. But that night, at the grand gala he was hosting, something caught his eye. Among the sea of glamorous faces, there was one woman who stood out. She wasn't flashy or trying to get attention. In fact, she was quite the opposite, reserved, almost shy. Her name was Emily Carter, and she had come to the gala as a guest of a friend, not seeking the spotlight, but rather quietly observing the luxury surrounding her. Adam's first glance at her was nothing more than a passing interest. But as the evening unfolded, something about Emily kept drawing his attention. She wasn't like the other women at the event, the ones who surrounded him with fake smiles and eager eyes. Emily had an aura of mystery around her, quiet, graceful, and undeniably captivating. She was different. As the night wore on, Adam found himself inexplicably intrigued by her, his curiosity growing stronger with every glance. It wasn't just her looks, though she was beautiful in a way that felt real, natural, but something in her presence made Adam feel as if there was more to her story, something hidden just beneath the surface. And then, the moment came. Emily's face suddenly went pale. She staggered slightly, and, before Adam could react, she collapsed. Panic surged through the crowd as whispers spread like wildfire. Adam's instincts kicked in, and he rushed to her side. Kneeling beside her, he could feel the weight of the situation. She was unconscious, and a small pool of blood had formed beneath her. At first, he thought it might have been an injury from the fall. But as he looked closer, he realized something that shocked him to his core. There was blood on her dress, but it wasn't from a fall. It was something else. Something he had never expected to see in someone like her. Emily was a virgin. It wasn't just the blood that told him that. It was the way she had carried herself, the innocence in her eyes, the quiet strength she exuded that made it impossible to ignore. Adam was no stranger to women, but this was different. There was something pure, untouched about her, and it made him feel an emotion he hadn't experienced in a long time: protectiveness. In that moment, as he knelt beside her, Adam made a decision no one would ever have expected. Instead of taking advantage of her vulnerability, he did the one thing that no one else in his world would have done. He took her away from the chaos of the gala, away from the prying eyes of the crowd, and promised himself that he would protect her from everything and everyone who might hurt her. Adam didn't know it yet, but this one act of kindness would change everything, for both of them. As Adam carried Emily through the luxurious corridors of the gala venue, his mind raced. He had never been the kind of man to rush into anything. He wasn't impulsive, nor was he prone to making snap decisions. But something about Emily, something about that moment when he saw the blood on her dress, triggered something deep within him. His chest tightened as he held her close, her fragile form resting against his arms. She felt lighter than he had imagined, almost ethereal, as if she were more than just a woman in his arms, but a puzzle that needed to be solved. Adam didn't know what it was about her, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't let her be harmed. He had to get her out of there. The guests at the gala were beginning to murmur, but Adam ignored them. The only thing that mattered was Emily. Her breaths were shallow, and her pale face only deepened his concern. He quickened his pace, moving toward a quieter, more secluded area where he could think, where he could figure out what was happening. When he finally reached a private lounge, he gently laid her on the plush sofa, his heart racing. He took a step back, momentarily lost in thought, before he snapped into action. His hands moved instinctively as he checked her pulse. Steady. Thank God. The blood on her dress still unsettled him, but it didn't seem like an injury from a fall. This wasn't just a random accident. There was something more to it. He stood over her, watching her breathe, as a flood of questions filled his mind. Who was she really? Why was she at the gala in the first place? And why did this feel so personal? Emily's eyelids fluttered, and Adam knelt beside her, his eyes scanning her face for any sign of consciousness. Emily, he whispered, his voice soft, almost gentle, as he touched her hand. She stirred, a soft groan escaping her lips. For a moment, Adam wasn't sure if she was fully awake or still trapped in a haze of unconsciousness. But then her eyes slowly opened, meeting his gaze. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice weak, barely above a whisper. Adam's heart skipped a beat. It was the first time he had heard her speak, and there was something about the way she said it, so vulnerable, so raw, that made him want to protect her even more. "You're safe," he said, his voice firm but kind. "You're at a private lounge. You fainted at the gala." Emily blinked, her eyes darting around as she tried to process her surroundings. Her hand instinctively went to her chest, where the bloodstains still lingered on her dress. A faint blush crept up her neck. Adam watched her, noting how she seemed embarrassed, like she wanted to retreat into herself. It was clear that this wasn't something she had ever dealt with before. I'm sorry," she mumbled, sitting up slowly. Her face was still pale, and her voice cracked slightly. Adam's heart ached for her. "There's no need to apologize," he replied, leaning forward slightly to make sure she was okay. "It's all right. Just take it easy." Emily took a deep breath, her fingers still gripping the fabric of her dress where the blood had soaked through. She looked at him, as if trying to read his intentions. "I don't know what happened," she whispered. Adam could see the confusion and fear in her eyes, and it made him realize just how out of place she must have felt in that room full of strangers. He could tell she wasn't used to this world of wealth and extravagance. "It's not your fault," Adam said gently, his voice steady. "But I need you to listen to me, Emily. You're safe now. I'll make sure no one hurts you. You're not alone in this." She seemed to relax a little at his words, but he could tell she was still scared, still uncertain about what had happened. Adam felt a strange pull in his chest, a sense of responsibility. He wasn't sure why he felt so compelled to protect her, but something in the way she looked at him, something in the way she trusted him without question, made him feel like he couldn't just walk away. He had to help her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know why you're doing this, but thank you." Adam smiled softly, trying to reassure her. "I don't need thanks. I just need you to be okay." As they sat in the quiet lounge, the world outside felt distant, as if nothing mattered except the two of them. Adam's mind raced with thoughts of how to help her, how to make sure she wasn't just another woman in his world who would fade away. There was something about her, something real and honest that made him question everything he had ever known. Emily Carter was no ordinary woman, and Adam Sinclair was about to find out just how much his life was about to change. The hours passed slowly as Emily rested in the private lounge, the soft hum of distant voices from the gala barely reaching them. Adam kept a watchful eye on her, his thoughts swirling in a mix of concern and curiosity. What had happened to Emily? Why had she fainted? And more importantly, why did he feel so connected to her already? His mind couldn't stop racing, trying to piece together the puzzle of the woman lying before him. She was so different from everyone else in his life. She wasn't interested in his wealth or status, and yet, there was an undeniable magnetism between them. Her presence felt like a breath of fresh air, so pure, so untouched by the world he lived in. As Emily slowly regained her strength, she sat up on the sofa, her hands clutching the fabric of her dress, still shaken. Adam could see the confusion in her eyes, but also a quiet resilience. She wasn't the type to show vulnerability easily, but there it was, raw and unguarded. She finally spoke, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "I don't know what happened. I've never fainted before." Adam could hear the faint tremor in her voice, and it made something tighten in his chest. "It's okay," he reassured her, his tone gentle yet firm. "You're safe now, Emily. There's no need to worry. We'll figure this out." Emily nodded slowly, but her eyes still held a trace of fear, as if she were afraid to trust anyone in this unfamiliar place. Adam could relate to her unease. He had built his life around power, control, and wealth, but now, in the presence of this quiet, strong woman, all that seemed insignificant. He found himself wanting to protect her in a way he couldn't quite explain. "What's your story, Emily?" Adam asked, his voice gentle, yet full of curiosity. He wasn't sure if she would open up to him, but he felt a strange sense of trust between them. Emily hesitated, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of the fabric on her dress. She seemed to be searching for the right words, unsure of how much to reveal. "I didn't grow up in a world like this," she said softly, her eyes looking down at her hands. "I've never been to a gala, never been surrounded by so much luxury." Adam listened intently, sensing there was much more to her story than she was letting on. He could tell that the life she led was far different from the world of excess and privilege that he inhabited. But there was something about her honesty, her openness, that drew him in even more. "I don't belong here," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't even know why I'm here. I was just invited by a friend, but it all feels so out of place." Adam could see the discomfort in her expression, the way she fidgeted with her dress, as though she wanted to escape the very world that she had found herself in. And yet, there was something in her eyes, something deep and unspoken, that made Adam realize just how much he wanted to help her. "You belong here, Emily," Adam said, his voice calm and steady. "You don't have to be anyone other than who you are. You don't have to fit into anyone's expectations." Emily looked up at him, her gaze meeting his with a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. "But I don't fit in," she whispered. Adam smiled softly, leaning in slightly. "Maybe that's what makes you different. And that's a good thing. You don't have to be like everyone else. You're unique." She seemed to soften at his words, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since he'd met her. The wall she had built around herself began to crack, if only for a moment. Adam noticed how her gaze lingered on him, as though she were seeing him in a new light. There was something between them now, something unspoken, but undeniably present. For a brief second, Adam wondered if maybe, just maybe, they were both searching for something in each other. Something real. Something that had nothing to do with wealth or status, but everything to do with human connection. "Thank you," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know why you're being so kind to me, but thank you." Adam's heart softened at her words. He had always been known for his calculated decisions, his ability to control any situation. But this felt different. He felt a pull toward her that he couldn't ignore, a desire to protect her and see her smile. It wasn't something he had ever experienced before. "You don't need to thank me," Adam replied softly. "I just want you to be okay. That's all that matters." Emily smiled weakly, her eyes still tired but more at ease than before. Adam reached over and gently touched her hand, a silent promise that he would be there for her, no matter what. The world outside felt like a distant memory as the two of them sat in the quiet lounge, the bond between them growing stronger with every passing minute. As the night went on, the tension between Adam and Emily began to settle, but a strange feeling lingered in the air, something neither of them could fully grasp. Emily had regained most of her strength, but her mind seemed distant, still processing the overwhelming experience she had gone through. Adam could sense that she was still struggling with the world she had found herself in. She didn't belong here. Not in the sense of wealth and prestige, but in the way she carried herself. Humble, grounded, and seemingly unaffected by the surface-level distractions that Adam was so accustomed to. He couldn't help but feel drawn to her even more. It was as if she was a mirror reflecting back everything he had been too afraid to confront in his own life. Vulnerability, truth, and simplicity. The lavish world he had created around himself suddenly felt empty and hollow in comparison to the depth he saw in her. "How are you feeling now?" Adam asked softly, his voice gentle as he sat across from her. He had given her space to collect herself, but he still couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling him. Emily looked up at him, her expression still uncertain, but her eyes seemed to soften when they met his. "I feel better," she said quietly, her voice much stronger than before. "But I still don't understand why you're doing this. Why are you helping me?" Adam leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on her. For a moment, he didn't answer. He simply looked at her, trying to find the right words. She was right to ask. Why was he helping her? It wasn't like him to get involved in something that didn't serve his interests, something that didn't further his agenda. But with Emily, everything was different. "I don't know," he admitted honestly, his voice surprisingly steady. "Maybe because you remind me of something I lost a long time ago. Maybe because, for once, I want to do something that's real." Emily studied him carefully, as if weighing his words, trying to figure out if he was being truthful. For a moment, she was silent, her fingers still nervously twirling a strand of her hair. "I don't want to be a burden," she said softly, almost to herself. "I don't want to be one of those people who only take and never give anything back." Adam shook his head, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "You're not a burden, Emily. You're a person, and you deserve to be treated as such. Don't ever think otherwise." Emily didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to people speaking to her this way, so sincerely, so openly. She had always been the one who kept her distance from others, afraid of being vulnerable, afraid of what others might see. But Adam's kindness, his genuine concern for her well-being, was like a warm light cutting through the darkness she had always felt inside. The more she got to know him, the more she realized that he wasn't just another rich man used to getting whatever he wanted. He was different. She could see it in his eyes, in the way he spoke, in the way he made her feel like she mattered. And yet, she couldn't help but feel conflicted. The world they came from was so different, so far apart. Could something real ever come from it? "I'm not used to this," Emily admitted, her voice small. "I've always had to take care of myself, keep my guard up. I've never trusted anyone like this before." Adam's heart softened at her words. He could relate. Trust didn't come easy for him either. He had built walls around himself long ago, walls that no one had ever been able to break through. But with Emily, it felt different. It felt like, for the first time, he didn't have to be the powerful, calculating man everyone thought he was. He could just be. "Adam, you don't have to trust me all at once," he said gently. "But I hope you'll give me the chance to prove that I'm not like everyone else. I won't let you down." Emily looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to see through him. There was a long pause before she finally spoke. "I don't know what you want from me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I do know one thing. I don't want to be alone anymore." Adam's chest tightened at her words. There it was, the one thing he had been afraid to hear. But he couldn't ignore it. He didn't want her to be alone either. The idea of her being alone, vulnerable, in a world like this, unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. "You won't be alone, Emily," he promised, his voice firm but kind. "Not anymore." There was a moment of silence between them, a heavy weight in the air, but it was a weight that felt oddly comforting, like the beginning of something new. As the night stretched on, Adam and Emily sat together, talking about anything and everything. And for the first time in a long while, Adam felt a sense of peace. A peace that only came from knowing that, for all their differences, they had found something that was real. The next few days passed in a blur for Adam. His thoughts were consumed by Emily, by her honesty, her vulnerability, and the way she seemed to challenge everything he had come to expect from the world. The more he got to know her, the more he realized how much he had been living in a bubble, surrounded by superficial relationships and the cold comforts of wealth. Emily, on the other hand, was grounded in a reality that Adam had never truly known. She didn't care about money, status, or appearances. She cared about what was real, about people, about kindness, and about making genuine connections. Adam found himself admiring her in a way he hadn't admired anyone before. He admired her strength, her ability to stay true to herself despite the world around her trying to change her. But there was also a part of him that felt a deep sense of protectiveness toward her. He knew that, despite the fact that she had started to trust him, she still carried the weight of her own past, a past that she hadn't fully shared with him. He wanted to know more, to understand her completely, but he also knew that he had to give her space. He couldn't push her to open up before she was ready. That evening, Adam invited Emily to dinner. It was an intimate gathering, just the two of them at his penthouse, with a view of the city skyline that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. As they sat across from each other, a quiet understanding passed between them. There was no need for words, no need for the usual pleasantries. They had already moved beyond that. "How have you been feeling?" Adam asked, his voice gentle, his eyes searching hers for any sign of discomfort. Emily took a deep breath, her hands resting on the table in front of her. "I've been better," she said, offering him a small, sincere smile. "I've had some time to think, and I feel more at peace than I did before." Adam's heart swelled with relief. He could see it in her eyes. She wasn't completely healed, but she was starting to find her way. She wasn't alone anymore. "I'm glad to hear that," he said softly, his gaze never leaving hers. "You deserve to feel at peace, Emily. You deserve all the happiness the world has to offer. Emily looked down for a moment, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her wine glass. I've never really had the chance to think about what I deserve, she said quietly. I've always just focused on surviving, doing what I had to do to get by. Adam felt a pang of sadness for her. He had no idea what her life had been like before she entered his world. He didn't know the struggles she had faced, the heartaches she had endured. But he could see that she was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known. You've survived, Adam said, his voice low, filled with admiration. And now you're starting to live. Emily's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, it felt as if the entire world around them had faded away. It was just the two of them, in that moment, sharing something real. Something neither of them had expected. Adam wasn't sure when it happened, but at some point during their dinner, he had begun to see Emily not just as someone in need of help, but as someone who could change his life. There was a quiet strength in her, a quiet wisdom that spoke volumes without her ever having to say much. She wasn't just a woman who had been through hardships. She was a woman who had survived them and come out stronger on the other side. And that, in Adam's eyes, made her more beautiful than anything else. I don't want to be a burden to you, Emily said, breaking the silence. Her voice was soft, but there was an unmistakable vulnerability in her words. Adam smiled, leaning forward slightly. You're not a burden, he said firmly. You're someone who has a lot to offer the world, someone who deserves to be happy. Don't ever doubt that. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to understand him. You're different, Adam, she said softly. I don't know how to explain it, but you're not like the others. I can feel it. Adam's heart skipped a beat. She was right. He wasn't like the others. And for the first time, he didn't want to be. He wanted to be the man she saw in him. The man who could be kind, who could be real, and who could offer something genuine. Maybe that's because I've never met anyone like you before, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily's gaze softened, and a faint blush spread across her cheeks. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with an unspoken understanding that neither of them had to explain. Adam knew that they were on the cusp of something that could change everything. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of what that might mean. The days following their dinner together were a mix of quiet reflection and subtle tension. Adam couldn't stop thinking about Emily, about how she had begun to open up to him, letting down the walls she had so carefully built around herself. He had always believed that he was in control of his life, that he could manipulate situations and people to get what he wanted. But with Emily, it was different. There was no manipulation, no games. She was genuine, and for the first time, Adam realized how much he had longed for something real. Emily, on the other hand, was beginning to feel a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. Her life had been a series of challenges, and she had always kept her guard up, unsure of who she could trust. But Adam had been there for her when she needed him the most. He had shown her kindness and understanding, even when she had nothing to offer in return. She had never experienced that before, and it made her question everything she had known about herself. I've been thinking a lot, Emily said one afternoon, breaking the silence between them. She had come over to Adam's penthouse again, and they were sitting on the balcony, watching the sunset together. The city below them buzzed with life, but up here, in the stillness, it was as if they were in their own little world. About what? Adam asked, his voice soft but full of curiosity. He had noticed how much she had been processing lately, and he could tell that she was on the brink of a realization. About who I am, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. For so long, I've been living my life for others, doing what I thought I had to do to survive. But now, I'm starting to see that there's more to me than just that. Adam turned to face her, his gaze steady and warm. You've always been more than just that, Emily, he said gently. You've always been strong, and you've always been true to yourself, even when you didn't know it. Emily looked at him, her eyes searching his face for the truth in his words. She could see it. He meant every word. And for the first time, she believed it too. I don't know what's next, Emily continued, but I'm ready to find out. I'm ready to stop hiding from myself, to stop pretending to be someone I'm not. I don't want to keep living in fear. Adam smiled, his heart swelling with pride. He had seen this shift in her, this new sense of strength emerging, and it filled him with a deep sense of respect. He knew that Emily was no longer the same woman she had been when they first met. She had grown, not just in her understanding of the world around her, but in her understanding of herself. "You don't have to be afraid," Adam said softly, reaching over to gently touch her hand. "You have nothing to prove to anyone. You're enough, just as you are." Emily turned her hand over, intertwining her fingers with his, a gesture that felt both natural and intimate. She didn't have to say anything. She simply leaned into him, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched the sun dip below the horizon. In that moment, Adam realized just how much he had come to rely on her presence. She had become a part of his life, a part of him. And for the first time, he wasn't afraid to admit it. "I don't want to lose this," Emily whispered after a while, breaking the silence. "I don't want to lose what we've started." Adam turned to face her, his expression serious but kind. "You won't lose it," he promised. "I'm not going anywhere, Emily. We're in this together." For a moment, they simply sat there, their hands still intertwined, the weight of his words sinking in. There was something real between them, something that couldn't be ignored or denied. Adam knew that he couldn't go back to the life he had before. He couldn't go back to the world of empty relationships and fleeting connections. Not now that he had experienced something so much more meaningful. Emily, too, felt the shift. She wasn't the same woman who had walked into his life so uncertain, so afraid. She was stronger now, more confident in who she was and what she wanted. And what she wanted, what she had come to realize she needed, was Adam. Not just as a protector, but as someone who saw her, who understood her, and who accepted her for who she truly was. As the night deepened and the city lights flickered below, Emily and Adam sat side by side, not saying anything, but knowing in their hearts that something deep and real had begun between them. They didn't have to understand everything, but they knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The weeks that followed were a delicate balance of quiet moments and unspoken understanding. Adam and Emily spent more time together, their connection growing deeper with each passing day. The outside world, with all its pressures and expectations, seemed to fade into the background when they were with each other. They didn't need grand gestures or expensive gifts to feel close. It was the simple moments, the shared silence, the laughter over a shared cup of coffee, the way their hands brushed against each other, that made them feel more connected than anything else ever could. Adam found himself more present in these moments than he had ever been before. He had spent so much of his life pursuing success, accumulating wealth, and building his empire. But none of it had ever felt as fulfilling as the time he spent with Emily. She had a way of grounding him, of making him see the world through a different lens. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't worried about the next big deal or the next opportunity. He was simply living in the moment. Emily, too, felt a change within herself. The weight of her past, the fears and doubts that had once consumed her, seemed to lift a little more each day. Adam's presence gave her a sense of security she had never known. She had always relied on herself, always believed that she had to handle everything on her own. But now, she was learning to let someone else in, to trust someone who truly cared for her. She wasn't used to it, and at times, it felt uncomfortable, like a part of her was still trying to push away the vulnerability that Adam had slowly helped her uncover. But every time she felt that hesitation, Adam was there, steady and reassuring, reminding her that it was okay to lean on him. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of Adam's penthouse, watching the city lights twinkle below them, Emily turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft but serious, "about what happens next. About us." Adam looked at her, his heart skipping a beat. He had been thinking about the same thing, but he wasn't sure how to bring it up. He didn't want to rush anything, didn't want to pressure her into anything before she was ready. "What about us?" he asked gently, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. Emily took a deep breath, her eyes gazing into the distance before meeting his. "I don't know what the future holds, Adam," she said slowly. "But for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm ready to find out. I feel like I can let go of the fear that's been holding me back. I don't want to keep hiding from what could be." Adam's heart swelled with emotion as he listened to her words. He could hear the quiet strength in her voice, the conviction that hadn't been there when they first met. She had come so far, and he was so proud of her. "I feel the same way," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what the future looks like either, but I know that I want to be with you. I want to be there for you, no matter what." There was a pause, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. It was as if they were both processing the enormity of what had just been said, of the unspoken promise they were making to each other. Emily smiled, her eyes bright with sincerity. "I think we're both ready for something real," she said softly. "Something that's not about fear or what we think we should be, but about who we really are." Adam reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. He had spent so much of his life trying to build something that would give him power, something that would make him feel whole. But now, in this quiet moment with Emily, he realized that he had already found what he had been searching for. It wasn't in the success or the money or the recognition. It was here with her. "I don't need anything more than this," Adam said, his voice filled with certainty. "I don't need to prove anything. I have you." Emily squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with warmth. "And I have you," she whispered. The city lights shimmered in the background, but in that moment, it felt like the world had stopped turning. There was only them, together, in this quiet space where everything felt right. They didn't have all the answers, but they didn't need them. They had each other, and for now, that was enough. The days turned into weeks, and Adam and Emily's relationship continued to evolve in ways neither of them had expected. It wasn't just about shared moments anymore. It was about building something together, something that was becoming more and more real. Adam had always prided himself on being a man who could control his surroundings, a man who had mastered the art of getting what he wanted. But with Emily, he found that control wasn't the point. It wasn't about the grand gestures or the luxurious gifts. Those things had always been easy for him. What mattered now was the connection between them, something deeper, something that couldn't be bought or sold. Emily, too, had begun to understand this new reality. She had always felt like she had to prove herself, like she had to do everything on her own. But with Adam, she felt a sense of freedom she had never known before. She could be herself, not the person she thought she had to be, but the person she truly was. And for the first time, she didn't feel afraid to show it. As they spent more time together, Emily began to open up in ways that surprised even her. She told Adam about her childhood, about the struggles she had faced growing up, and the constant feeling of being out of place in a world that seemed to expect so much from her. Adam listened, never interrupting, never trying to fix things. He simply listened, offering her a safe space to express everything she had kept buried for so long. "You've been through a lot," Adam said one evening, his voice soft with understanding. They were sitting on the couch in his penthouse, the city lights outside casting a gentle glow in the room. Emily had just finished telling him about the hardships she had faced growing up, about how she had always been the one to take care of everything, even when she was just a kid. "I didn't know how to ask for help," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I had to do everything on my own. But you've shown me that I don't have to do it all by myself." Adam reached over and took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. "You don't have to," he said simply. "You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You have me now, and I'm here for you, no matter what." Emily looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. She could see the sincerity in his words, and it made her heart swell with gratitude. She had never had someone say those words to her before. She had never had someone offer to share the burden. It felt both overwhelming and comforting. "Thank you," she whispered. Adam smiled, his thumb gently brushing the back of her hand. "There's nothing to thank me for. I care about you, Emily. That's enough for me." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had never imagined that she would find someone like Adam, someone who saw her for who she truly was, who didn't expect her to be anything other than herself. For so long, she had kept her guard up, afraid to let anyone in, afraid of being hurt. But with Adam, she felt safe. She felt like she could finally let go of all the walls she had built around her heart. "I don't want to hide anymore," Emily said, her voice steady with newfound confidence. "I don't want to be afraid of who I am or what I want. I want to live my life without fear, without holding back." Adam's heart swelled with pride as he listened to her. She had come so far in such a short time, and he knew that this was just the beginning of something even greater. "You don't have to hide," he said, his voice filled with certainty. "You don't have to be afraid of anything. You have me, and I'll always be here for you." Emily smiled softly, her heart full of warmth. For the first time in a long time, She felt at peace with herself. She wasn't perfect, and she didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't alone anymore. Adam had shown her that, and for that, she was more grateful than she could put into words. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," she said softly, her voice filled with determination. "With you, Adam. I'm ready." Adam's smile grew wider as he leaned in closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "And I'm ready for you, Emily. I always will be." They sat there, the world outside still and quiet, but inside, everything felt right. Together, they were ready for whatever the future held, knowing that no matter what happened, they would face it side by side. As the days passed, Adam and Emily continued to grow closer, their bond strengthening with every conversation, every shared moment. They had both opened up in ways that neither of them had ever expected. Emily, who had always kept to herself, now found herself relying on Adam more and more. It wasn't just about him being there for her physically. It was about the emotional support, the quiet reassurance that no matter what happened, she wasn't alone anymore. Adam, too, had changed. He had always been a man who thrived on control, on building his empire and maintaining a distance from people. But Emily had broken down the walls he had so carefully constructed around his heart. She made him realize that success and wealth were empty without someone to share it with, and that connection, real and true, was worth more than anything he had ever accomplished. One evening, Adam and Emily decided to take a walk through the city. The night air was cool, the streets lit with the glow of streetlights and the distant hum of traffic. They walked side by side, not saying much, but feeling perfectly content in each other's presence. It wasn't the kind of walk they had once imagined. There were no grand gestures or proclamations. Instead, it was simple, quiet, and comfortable. Just two people who had found something special in each other. "You know," Emily said after a while, breaking the silence, "I used to think that happiness was something you had to earn, that you had to work hard and prove yourself worthy of it." Adam looked at her, his expression soft. "And now?" he asked. Emily smiled, her eyes meeting his. "Now I realize that happiness isn't something you earn. It's something you allow yourself to feel. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just have to be who you are." Adam couldn't help but admire her. She had come so far, and every time she shared her thoughts with him, he felt like he was learning from her. She had a way of seeing the world that was so different from his own, but it was exactly what he needed. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly, his voice filled with sincerity. "You've come a long way." Emily stopped walking for a moment, turning to face him. "You've helped me get here," she said, her voice full of gratitude. "I don't think I could have done it without you." Adam reached for her hand, his fingers brushing against hers, and for a moment, they stood there, just holding hands, letting the silence wrap around them. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a silence that said everything they needed to say without words. "You don't have to thank me," Adam said softly. "I just wanted to be here for you. You don't need to carry everything on your own." Emily squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with emotion. "You're more than just here for me, Adam. You've become my strength when I couldn't find my own." Adam smiled at her words, his heart full. "And you've become mine," he said. "I never thought I needed someone. But now, I can't imagine my life without you." Emily's eyes softened, and she took a step closer to him. The distance between them, once so vast, now seemed to disappear with each passing day. There was no longer any hesitation, no walls between them, just a quiet certainty that they had found something worth holding on to. They continued their walk through the city, the lights flickering around them, the air cool and crisp. But it didn't matter what the world outside was like. As long as they had each other, they knew they could face anything. The future, though uncertain, now seemed filled with endless possibilities. They didn't know where it would lead, but together, they were ready to find out. No longer was Emily the woman who feared what lay ahead, and no longer was Adam the man who built walls to protect himself. Together, they had found something real, something solid, something that made every moment feel more meaningful than anything they had ever known before. The city around them buzzed with life, but in that moment, they felt as if the world had stopped just for them. And in that silence, that quiet certainty, they both knew that whatever came next, they would face it hand in hand.